Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Vita talking with my dear friend Doug Keck of EWTN. Doug, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Doug, what news could we possibly talk about? Maybe the little-known news that, I don't know, there seems to be a feud between Pope Leo XIV and Donald Trump. Everyone's talking about this, and there's no short of commentary and opinion. I want to begin by asking you to speak reason into some of the insanity of it all.
Well, I think my sense is, first of all, the Pope is always going to be in favor of peace, and as the head of the church and as a religious leader, should always be speaking about not having war and avoiding killing and conflict and want encounter and dialogue. I think that's part of his job to speak that way. That being said, prudentially on the other side, the President of the United States has to do what he thinks is right thing for his particular country in his particular situation, which may differ, I should say, from what the Pope might be thinking. Now, this kind of popped up about the Iran war, but obviously, I think the major issue that's been percolating all along underneath this since Trump basically came to the office is really the immigration issue. I mean, that's really the sore spot that I think Rome has, as well as it's clear from other cardinals in the United States and other bishops what an issue this is, and its impact on Catholics and on Catholic organizations. So I think this kind of is just another aspect of that. And again, I don't think that the Pope is out of line talking in general about the fact that, war is not a good thing. I think that's fine. I do think that, Trump himself, with his own personality, tends to personalize things in some ways and react in a different way because he's not a politician. Politician would say, oh, well, so-and-so, and give you the kind of generic, everything's fine, and I love the Pope kind of answer, even if they felt totally different. It's also interesting that prior to this situation of the immigration issue, let's say, and then now the war discussion, for a number of years during the Biden administration, neither Francis, we didn't hear anything about very many people coming out about abortion, stem cell research, gay rights, transgender rights, religious liberty, all of these things that clearly, and we've seen now, have come out even about religious liberty, about the bias against Catholics under the Biden administration, who allegedly was a Catholic or is a Catholic. But, where was all the outcry on those things? It just seems to be a little bit, concerning or raise an eyebrow when you say, well, how come we don't hear these big speeches and big issues about this and pounding the drum, but now all of a sudden on the Iranian situation we are, when one could clearly argue that the idea that here was a system, a terror state, which I think everybody actually, at least unofficially believes is a terror state. They may not say it in public because of the politics of Islam in other countries as it impacts Catholics. So, I think everybody understands that if they got the bomb, that would not be a good thing. And I don't think there's any question people have in their minds that they would use it if they thought they could get away with it. And if, in fact, it's true that that's what was going on, you could certainly use the idea that, while your neighbor next door is building a bomb that he's told you he's going to throw at your house, maybe, going and trying to stop him from doing that is not necessarily being overly aggressive.
I completely agree with you, and I want to ask for you to share your thoughts. How much of the outrage we're seeing right now is due to the fact that we have forgotten to view things out of any other lens except a political one?
Well, I think that's definitely true, and I think, and again, that's why I kind of separate the two in many of these things and say, listen, the church's obligation and job is to get us to heaven. Donald Trump's or any president obligation is not to get us to heaven. Is in theory, constitutionally, it's to protect the people of the United States. And then you can argue prudentially, as we say, about what the best way of doing that is. That's a different story than something that is clearly a moral issue directly. But I do think clearly that part of the thing also is that we really have moved into a position where you could almost say that it seems to be at some level that the church's message is almost one of pacifism now, or pretty close to it. That there's just like there's no just reason really to have capital punishment, which is really based on the same idea of like a self-defense kind of thing because of the protecting society from an individual. That there's no reason really that there should ever be a war, as opposed to the idea that, from a Christian perspective, we would never want a war, which is different than saying there should never be one or could never be one that could be justified.
Can you please speak into the tendency we all have for knee-jerk outrage, and what ought to be the Christian response?
Well, I mean, clearly this is political, to go back to what you said initially. I think I think for, people who care, I guess they see it, they can get into the discussion, theological discussion. But the politics are, there's a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump. And if you're going to give him some reason to hammer him, which is always funny with some cases, is suddenly all these people, like I said, care about what the Pope has to say, even though they didn't care about any of the other things he has to say. And it's the same thing even with Christians. We want Christianity kept, locked up inside the church, except when they decide that you're saying something tough and they accuse you of not being very Christian, as if now suddenly that's something to aspire to, when yesterday it was a reason that you're a bigot. So it's just politics. And the other thing, unfortunately, that looks bad too is nothing was said very much. Next thing you know, David Axelrod from Chicago, Obama's campaign manager, is in Rome, and suddenly we start hearing people speaking up out of Rome, and people start to think how much of this is about the midterms, how much of this is about the idea of turning the Catholic vote to vote Democratic, whether it be because to stop the Iranian situation or maybe to help out the immigration situation. You could, conspiratorially at least question the timing of this situation.
Could you also speak to the tendency we all have because of social media to act like we are experts on every new topic that comes, including this, foreign policy? Yeah, please share some wisdom in that light.
Well, I'll say I'm the first person. What do I know? I mean, I know what I read. I know what I tend to see. I don't have any degrees in any of these particular things. I try to look at them from a common sense perspective, understanding human nature. And I think you're right. I mean, what happens is we all tend to support whatever the last article we read that agreed with what we already believed, right? And that tends to be where our position is. And then when somebody comes with a contrary position, we don't listen to it. We just say, well, you're a bigot or whatever. I have to say that I think people in the more conservative side, I think my experience has been, are more willing to at least consider a more liberal argument. I think today, that used to be the case for liberals too. It's gotten so much more where it's like there's no consideration of the argument. It can't possibly be right because it's evil. It's not a bad idea. It's an evil idea. Meanwhile, most of these people don't tend to seem to believe in evil on a regular basis. Liberals don't tend to be the ones most thinking about what Satan is doing in their lives on any regular basis, unless it's seen from a positive perspective, which we hear rumors of these days, which seems outrageous, but who knows these days.
Doug, thank you so very much for being a voice of sanity. My guest has been Doug Keck of EWTN, and we've been talking about, well, frankly, the barrage of events that have percolated into some level of social insanity pertaining to the Pope and Donald Trump, and that Catholicism and the way of virtue is the path of sanity. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.